point, or I should say not point two, but the second aspect of this physical, mental, and spiritual is the mental culture. And in conventional educational methodology, the mental development is an area that's heavily focused on, but our approach to education tends to focus on how to get information into the child's mind and how to get them to retain it, rather than true mental development. And what often happens is it becomes something very me-centered. It becomes this cycle of learn as much as you can so you pass the test, so you can go on to the next level, so you can go on to another realm of education, so you can get into another school, so you can eventually, and it's like, where does this cycle end? Well, I guess eventually you get a good job and you make a lot of money and you have a nice house and a nice car, and it's so me-centered, me-focused about how much information I can learn and what I can do. I believe it's essential that we develop our mind and that we learn, but we need to have a different purpose from the world. He is a Christian who aims to reach the highest attainments for the purpose of doing others good. We talked this morning about unselfishness. Why do we learn? Why do we study? Is it to benefit ourselves or is it to benefit others? Are we really training missionaries? We read more, Ministry of Healing. It is not well to crowd the mind with studies that require intense application, but that are not brought into use in practical life. Such an education will be a loss to the student. It is not enough even to have knowledge. We must have the ability to use the knowledge aright. Now, remember what I mentioned earlier. Many times to enter the school of Christ, we'll need to discard some things. Now, as we look at this statement and we understand that it is what we are able to learn and put into practice that is really of value, do you think there might be some subjects, traditionally taught subjects in education, that we might discard because they're really not all that useful for life? And another aspect just to think of, how many of us at some point in our education said, when am I ever going to use this? Let's be honest. We've all said that, right? When am I going to use this? Like, really, is this that important? That's a good question to ask. We really should ask that question. Now, certainly, there are times when the parent or the teacher sees, okay, this is something I think the child needs to learn. They are going to use this. This is essential information. But how much better it would be that we try to awaken that interest and the desire in a child to learn by creating environments where they can put into practice what they're learning. Book Education, page 41, it says that true education is not the forcing of instruction on an unready and unreceptive mind. The interest must be aroused and the mental powers awakened and the interest aroused. So the mind has to be ready for it, but you also have to awaken that interest. And this learning without application has serious spiritual implications. Because what happens when a child becomes accustomed to learning without putting into practice in the schoolroom, and then they're in church and they learn spiritual things, but they have the habit of just learning without doing? Did Jesus say anything about that? Hearers of the word and not doers? And I think about what E.A. Sutherland, one of our early educational pioneers, part of Madison School, and wrote the book Studies in Christian Education, was taken from a series of lectures of his. He talks about the papal system of education as part of the Counter-Reformation. The papal system of education makes teachers content to repeat set lessons to their students as they themselves learn them in school, with no thought of making practical application. The students, in turn, go out to teach others the same rote they have learned, and thus the endless treadmill goes on, ever learning but never getting anywhere. As I thought about this, I said, that's actually exactly what Satan wants. This treadmill that goes generation after generation after generation, always learning but never coming, like the Bible says, ever learning but never coming to the knowledge of the truth, never putting it into practice. You see, Satan would be happy for us to have Bible class. You say, what? Satan happy for us Bible class? Yeah. Satan has no problem with us having Bible class. Satan has no problem with us studying the spirit of prophecy as long as we don't put it into practice. Satan himself knows the Bible. The Bible says the devils believe and tremble. What's the difference between Satan's knowledge of the Bible and the true Christian's knowledge of the Bible? It's the true Christian learns and puts it into practice. It's not just information in the mind. This is why we need to be so careful in our educational endeavors that what is learned is acted upon and put into practice. And again, that might mean we're going to have to get rid of some things that are not all that essential. It's the use they make of knowledge that determines the value of their education.